When you are on a journey of leaving insomnia, you want to know about the most common pitfalls on that journey that can potentially keep you from arriving where you want to be. This is why in this episode, we're going to talk about closing the hood, the truce, and token transfer, which are the three most common tricky situations that can keep us from arriving where we want to be, which is a place of peaceful sleep and peace of mind. Let's take a look. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a sleep physician turned sleep coach and founder of the Sleep Coach School, in which we help driven, health conscious, and high achieving individuals such as yourself leave the sleep struggle and find peaceful sleep forever. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the three most common reasons I see where people get stuck, have a latency in the recovery journey, where things get tricky. And these are topics that I talk a lot about because, of course, what we want for our students is to truly leave the struggle and not have any struggle with sleep forever. Now, this episode is going to be quite condensed with value, with information. So I recommend that you take your time going through the three sections, maybe pause after each one, reflect, see if it applies to you, contextualize, rather than going through everything kind of quickly. I think you will get the most value if you do it in that way. Now, let's take a look at these pitfalls. And I don't love the word pitfall. It can sound a little scary, but I use it because then people will know what I'm talking about. I would probably call them tricky situations, but that doesn't sound so clear what that is. So anyways, here they are: closing the hood, the truce, and token transfer. We're going to go over them one by one, see what they mean, see what they are, and of course, see how we can leap over them, how we can get past them so we don't struggle with them anymore. And so the first one is closing the hood. And credit where credit is due. I learned about this analogy from Brooke Castillo of the Life Coach School. And she teaches it the same way I do, I think, which is the following. So imagine that there's some problem with your car. You hear these weird sounds from, you don't really know where, but some front part of the car, and it's acting a little odd. And you decide you want to try to figure out what's going on, right? So you open the hood and you take a look at the engine, at the motor, and everything else that, that is under the hood. And you get overwhelmed. There's just all these cables and wires and tubes and all kinds of things connected in this in these ways that doesn't make sense to you. So you just close the hood and hope for the best and be like, oh, I can't deal with this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm just gonna close the hood and hope for the best. Now, the tricky thing here, of course, is that although our car may still function and run okay, there is some kind of issue there that we haven't really understood, and therefore we can't really solve it and get to the bottom of it. And it can be actually very similar on the insomnia recovery path, meaning we find that we understand that what's really driving the struggle is how we have been thinking about this, our habits, our behaviors, the way we have responded. And this is a way of really looking inside, looking at our own thoughts and emotions and actions. And having done this is already really brave and courageous. And you're just looking inside, looking under the hood puts you in a much more helpful position than somebody who hasn't really arrived even there. Somebody who's like, oh, it's just a neurotransmitter issue. It's just a hormonal imbalance. Oh, it's just this thing. That person hasn't even had kind of the courage to look under the hood. So just the fact that you are looking under the hood is very, very helpful, very brave, very courageous. Now, what can happen often though, is that you find our channel, you start learning, and just by starting to understand, you see things get easier. You sleep well for a night, you sleep well for 2 nights, and then you decide to just say, I'm going to close the hood here. This is it. I'm sleeping fine. I don't exactly understand everything, but I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that this just keeps going. This is closing the hood. And the tricky thing is that we haven't fully understood why we struggle with sleep in the first place. And we haven't fully understood why things got easier for us. And it is quite likely that without that full understanding, we tend to find ourselves struggling again because we get into the same kind of mental habits and loops that led us into struggle in the first place. So how do we leap over this pitfall? How do we leap over the closing the hood pitfall? This is about seeing the invitation to learn about yourself, to keep the hood open. Now, this is not like me saying, oh, you need to be constantly doing this introspection or do this for the rest of your life, or nothing like that. But just keep learning about yourself and sleep and what has led you to a struggle with it until you have that understanding, until you can answer all your questions yourself, until there's no more mystery. Because when there isn't any mystery, you have that full understanding, your fears will fade and your sleep struggles will fade along with it. So that's the first one, closing the hood, what it is and how to meet it. Now let's move to number 2 here, which I call the truce. And we'll start with this one by looking at another analogy, which is that insomnia can feel like a war. Like we have this war that we're engaged in, and we're fighting for our sleep, and it can appear as we have some battles we win and some battles we lose. We may put up blackout curtains and actually sleep well for a while, and we think like, I won this battle, I got this, I'm fighting back here. But then we have a choppy night again. Then we're like, oh my, I lost even with doing this. I have to find another way to do this. So insomnia can seem like a war where we kind of lose some battles, we win some battles. Now, when we, in the context of thinking of insomnia as a war, we can find ourselves in periods sleeping okay, sleeping without much struggle when a series of conditions are met. So like if we avoid coffee before this time, if we exercise a lot, if we take this supplement, if we do all these things, then we're like, okay, then I sleep okay. And this can appear as if we have found a way to control and manage insomnia in a way that it is a truce. We have found kind of a power balance where, it's not like the war is necessarily over, but if we keep doing exactly what we're doing, we have things under control. We have insomnia at bay. And this is a condition that we call the truce. And of course, we prefer being in this truce than in a war, 100%. But as long as we keep thinking that there is this enemy that we need to have a truce with, there is this antagonist that we need to contain, it's tricky for 2 reasons. One is that the truce will be fragile because we will be kind of having we will be looking out for an attack from the enemy. Like, is it going to happen tonight? Is the enemy going to strike? So that the truce tends to be fragile. And B, we will not actually be free. Again, the truce feels easier and nicer than being in a war and battle, of course, but oftentimes there's still this like monkey on our backs. There's a burden on our shoulders. We still don't feel free. We still feel this kind of constraint in our life. We have to maintain these conditions or insomnia will strike. So how do we leap over this pitfall? How do we leap over the truce pitfall? This is about seeing that there actually is no enemy, there is no truce, and that the battle we experienced was me versus me. It was an inner struggle where part of us was struggling with another part of ourselves. Like there's no real enemy here. And we'll go into this in a little bit deeper here so this makes sense. Firstly, those conditions that we think created the truce, let's say it was like avoiding coffee, taking the supplement, doing these things, they actually did not make you sleep easier. Rather, it was thinking, oh, I have met all these conditions, now I don't have to do anything more. Those conditions will take care of sleep for me. And that, like the part where we go like, now I don't have to do anything more. Now I don't have to do anything about my sleep. Now I don't have to manage my sleep. That's the magic. Peaceful sleep, easier sleep, always comes from less effort. So it's not the things, the conditions that led to the truth themselves that made us sleep, but it's simply our thinking that there is nothing I have to do no more. Another way of saying this is like there is no enemy I need to fight right now. That is what really, really helped. And seeing that, we can see that, oh, I don't need to keep doing these rituals or have these conditions. It is just about me starting to think, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to control. I don't have to manage. Also, it is really helpful to see that our brain is not our antagonist. It is just a confused protector, a confused partner, if you will. Our brain is a survival machine. It is there to keep us safe always, but it can get confused. And when it starts to see not sleeping at night as a threat, as a danger, as an enemy, then that will create this loop where we feel threatened, and that keeps us awake at night. And then we feel even more threatened, and then that keeps us awake at night. And this is the loop that we call insomnia. But again, there is actually no enemy. It is just a misunderstanding. And when we see that there is no enemy, then the war is abandoned. We're not engaging in the war anymore, and sleep happens by itself. This is how we meet the truce. And then finally, we're going to talk about something I call token transfer. And this happens when we actually have seen that not sleeping is not a danger or a threat. There is no enemy there, but we have identified something else as an enemy, something else as a threat. And we're approaching that in the same way we did with not sleeping before. This is when somebody says, I'm actually sleeping fine now, but how do I get rid of this hyperarousal? How do I get rid of this hypervigilance I have, this sense of like this anxiety that I have inside me? What's happened here is that one perceived threat, and this is what we call a token. A token is when we have started to thinking something that is not harmful as a threat. It has become tokenized. With insomnia, it is not sleeping at night that becomes tokenized, and we start to think of a threat. And with this token transfer is that one perceived threat has been detokenized, meaning not sleeping at night no longer is a threat to us. We've done this inner work, we've taken this inner journey, we have understood this, and therefore sleep is happening easier, but something else has taken its place. And very often it is anxiety that takes its place, or this sense of hyperarousal, this like kind of electric feeling we have inside us. That becomes the new token. We're gonna start thinking like, okay, not sleeping at night, that's fine, there's no threat there, but I'm anxious all the time. And that creates another loop where like we think of anxiety as a threat. So whenever we feel anxious, which we all do sometime, right? That leads us to feel threatened. And then when we're threatened, we feel more anxious. And when we feel anxious, we feel more threatened. And this is the new loop that now comes not from not sleeping being a token, but from anxiety being a token or being tokenized. And token transfer is tricky because it keeps us in another version of the inner struggle, which we don't want, but also it maintains that habit of trying to fight, to try to be in control, to try to escape, that can often lead back to insomnia. So we often have a student who's like, I'm actually sleeping fine now, but how do I get rid of my hyperarousal? And then that person's trying to get rid of the hyperarousal, control it, and eventually it can escalate to a point where there's again struggle with sleep, like those habits spill back into sleep, and we start thinking of not sleeping as a threat again. So this token transfer is very normal, of course. When our brain is in this like threatened state, it will actively look for things to keep us safe from. So token transfer is nothing strange or unusual or odd. It's very natural that it happens, but we of course don't want to be in this state of like constantly thinking we need to escape something. So how do we leap over this pitfall? I think it's really about seeing that if you call it generalized anxiety or OCD or PTSD or insomnia or chronic fatigue, it's not like these are different conditions. There is but one inner struggle, and it just shows up differently depending on what has been tokenized, depending on what we think of as a threat. And now we see that there's not like this multi front battle that we need to engage with to get rid of all these things. It's just seeing that there is, again, no threat, no real enemy, no real antagonist. See that there is but one inner struggle with different tokens. And when we befriend this new token, so let's say hyperarousal became tokenized for us, and we befriend that, we intellectually understand there's no real threat. B, we experientially learn that there's no threat by being willing to experience it. And C, we are kind and gentle with ourselves during this process. we see that we can befriend any token just like we befriend wakefulness, and we will leave that inner struggle. And that was it. We've talked about closing the hood, the truce, token transfer, which I see as the most common reasons we can get stuck on our journey where we want to be, and how to meet these situations. Hope this made a ton of sense to you. As always, let me know in the comment section if it felt like it applied to you, what you thought, and we will go from there. See you in the next one. Hi, it's me, Daniel, and I hope you found a lot of value in the video that you just watched. Now, I know insomnia can be an incredibly lonely place. You can feel isolated from everybody else because your friends, family members, coworkers, acquaintances simply don't understand what you're going through. And because they don't understand what you're going through, they also can't truly help you. Now imagine a place where everybody does understand you. Everybody has shared your experiences and know exactly what type of support and guidance will lead you to where you want to be, which is a place of peaceful sleep, feeling like yourself again, and feeling connected with the world. Such a place does exist, and it is called the Insomnia Immunity Program. And if you think it is time to join, then simply head over to our website, thesleepcoachschool.com, join the program, and we look forward to seeing you on the other side.